He thought he was buying her silence. He didn't know he was buying his downfall. The air in the Prestige Club was a carefully curated substance, thick with the scent of old money, starched linen, and ambition. It was a silence that cost more than most people's rent, a hush that was bought and paid for by the city's elite. Jasmine Williams moved through this rarefied atmosphere like a ghost, her posture a study in graceful efficiency, her face a mask of serene neutrality. But her eyes, a deep, soulful brown, held quiet storms. Each step in her low-heeled pumps was measured, each placement of a polished regal glass on a mahogany table an act of precise intent. Her hands, which had once flown across a keyboard, coding the future linguistic AI, now carried plates of seared foie gras and truffle-infused consommé. The weight of the silver tray was a constant, physical reminder of the chasm between her past and her present. 3 years. It had been 3 years since the world she'd built. The future she'd coded had crumbled to dust. The discreet chime of the entrance door sounded, and the club's energy shifted. Richard Blackwood entered, not like a man, but like a corporate takeover. He was preceded by his aura of invincibility, a force field of Taylor Brioni's suit and cold, calculating eyes. His entourage, sycophantic junior partners and a sleek, anxious publicist, fluttered around like moths to a particularly powerful flame. But the true focus of his attention were the two Japanese gentlemen flanking him, Mr. Yuki Sato and Mr. Kenji Tanaka of Sato Kai Holdings. This dinner was a courtship ritual, a prelude to a billion-dollar merger. Jasmine's blood ran cold. She'd known he was a member, had braced herself for the possibility. But seeing him in the flesh, so close she could smell his expensive cologne, was a visceral shock. A memory, sharp and unbidden, flashed behind her eyes. A sterile university office. The same man, younger but no less cruel, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. We fund innovation, Dr. Williams, not sob stories. She turned away, focusing on refilling a water glass, her hands trembling so slightly it was invisible to anyone but her. Breathe, Jasmine. You're just a waitress here. You're no one. The dinner proceeded with the predictable rhythm of power. Richard held court, his voice a confident baritone that commanded the room. He spoke of skyscrapers that scraped the heavens, of global empires built on vision and ruthlessness. Jasmine served their wine, her movements automatic. She was part of the scenery, an attractive, silent prop in the theater of his success. It was when she was clearing the main course plates that his gaze, previously sliding over her like she was furniture, snagged and held. A flicker of vague recognition crossed his features, quickly replaced by a predator's curiosity. He leaned back, swirling the burgundy liquid in his glass. "You," he said, the single word cutting to the murmured conversation. "You're exceptionally poised for a waitress." The table fell silent. Jasmine stopped, plate in hand, and met his gaze. "Thank you, sir." Richard's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I have a proposition for you. My associates here," he gestured to Sato and Tanaka, "are connoisseurs of culture. I've been telling them about the diverse talents one finds in this city." He let the pause hang, heavy with condescension. "I'll give you $100,000. Right now, a wire transfer before we order dessert." A nervous titter went through his entourage. Yuki Sato's expression remained politely impassive, but his eyes held a glint of discomfort. "All you have to do," Richard continued, savoring the spectacle he was creating, "is serve us in Chinese. A little performance. Describe this overpriced dessert menu in the language of the Great Red Dragon. Entertain us." The air left Jasmine's lungs. The quiet clatter of cutlery from other tables seemed to magnify, the soft jazz piano now a jarring cacophony. $100,000. It was a life-changing sum. It would pay off the last of her mother's medical debt, cover the new physical therapy regimen, maybe even allow her to stop working 3 jobs and breathe for a single blessed moment. It was everything she needed, offered in the most degrading way possible. "He's buying you," a voice screamed inside her. "He's turning your heritage, your intellect, into a party trick. He doesn't even remember you. You are so utterly beneath him." She saw her mother's face, pale against the hospital pillows, her smile brave but her eyes tired. She felt the weight of eviction notices, the cold fear of the collection calls. She remembered the sting of betrayal, the way her academic career had evaporated like mist, all because this man had decided her desperation was an inconvenience. The entire restaurant was watching. The other elites, the power brokers and socialites, were observing this social experiment with detached amusement. They were waiting to see if the poor, beautiful waitress would debase herself for a stack of cash. It was a test of her dignity's price tag. Jasmine's mask of serenity didn't crack. She placed a plate she was holding back onto the table with a soft, definitive click. She looked at Richard, her gaze steady, though her heart was a frantic bird beating against her ribs. $100,000 is a significant amount for a performance, Mr. Blackwood, she said, her voice clear and carrying. It suggests you value the spectacle highly. Richard's smirk widened, thinking she was negotiating. I pay for quality. I'm sure you do, she replied. The silence in the room was now absolute, the piano player having stopped mid-bar. The humiliation was supposed to be hers, but her quiet, unnerving acceptance was turning the tables. She wasn't crying, wasn't fleeing, wasn't even angry. She was assessing him. Then she took a step closer to the table. The laughter from his entourage died, uncertain. She looked him straight in the eye, and for the first time, Richard Blackwood felt a sliver of ice slide down his spine. This wasn't the look of a servant. This was the look of a judge. You don't remember me, do you, Mr. Blackwood? Her voice was low, but it cut through the opulent silence like a shard of glass. Richard froze. The name Williams on her tag meant nothing to him. She was just another face in the legion of people he had used and discarded on his way to the top. But her eyes, there was a history in them, a history he had authored and then forgotten. His mind, a formidable database of deals and adversaries, came up blank. This was just a waitress, wasn't it? No, he said, the word blunt, his confidence momentarily frayed at the edges. A small, cold smile touched Jasmine's lips. It was a smile that promised a reckoning. You will, she replied, her voice a blend of ice and fire. And in that moment, the predator became the prey. The word, you will, hung in the perfumed air of the Prestige Club, a spoken spell that fractured the present. For Jasmine, the opulent room dissolved, the smug face of Richard Blackwood blurring and reforming into the face of the man who had shattered her life 3 years earlier. The memory wasn't gentle wave. It was a riptide, pulling her under. Then, the air in her Columbia University office had been different. It smelled of old books, coffee, and the electric hum of potential. Dr. Jasmine Williams, at 28, was a rising star in the linguistics and computer science departments. Her dissertation on neurolinguistic programming had been published to acclaim, and her project, the Neurolingual Model, was on the cusp of revolutionizing real-time AI translation. It didn't just translate words, it translated context, cultural nuance, and emotional subtext. It was, her mentor had declared, the closest thing to a true universal translator the world had ever seen. She was in the middle of a video call with a tech journal in Berlin, explaining the model's semantic clustering algorithms, when her phone buzzed incessantly. It was a nursing home. Her mother, Grace, a vibrant high school English teacher who had poured every resource into Jasmine's education, had suffered a massive stroke. The world tilted on its axis. The algorithms, the code, the acclaim, all turned to noise. The next 48 hours were a blur of ICU waiting rooms, the beeping of monitors, and the sterile, unforgiving smell of antiseptic. The diagnosis was severe: aphasia, partial paralysis. The recovery would be long, difficult, and astronomically expensive. Her mother's insurance, a flimsy shield, was full of loopholes and denials. Jasmine, who had always found solace in the order of code, was now lost in the chaotic, terrifying landscape of the American healthcare system. The bills piled up, a mountain of paper threatening to bury them both. Desperation, a cold, sharp claw, tightened its grip around her heart. Her mentor, Dr. Albright, suggested she appeal to the university's Board of Trustees' discretionary fund for emergency faculty aid. It's a long shot, Jasmine, but your work is invaluable. They'd be fools not to help. The boardroom was even more intimidating than the Prestige Club. It was a temple of institutional power, all dark wood and portraits of dead white men. She presented her case, her voice shaking only slightly as she outlined her mother's condition and the financial abyss it had created. She wasn't asking for a handout. She was asking for a bridge, a way to keep her mother alive and her research afloat. The board members listened with polite, detached interest. Then, the man at the head of the table, a new donor being given a tour of the university's inner workings, spoke. Richard Blackwood. He wasn't the titan he was today, but the arrogance was fully formed. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Dr. Williams, your work is impressive," he began, his tone making it clear he found it anything but. "But the purpose of this fund is to fuel innovation that provides a tangible return on investment. A new lab, a piece of equipment. What you're describing is a personal sob story." The phrase landed like a blow. Sob story. He reduced her mother's life, her family's crisis, to a melodramatic trope. "My research is on the verge of a breakthrough," she argued, her composure cracking. "If I lose my focus now, years of work could be lost." "Precisely the point," Richard said, his gaze cold. "We cannot have our brightest minds distracted by personal drama. The university must remain a bastion of unsentimental progress. My recommendation is to deny the request." And just like that, it was over. The other board members, unwilling to contradict their powerful new benefactor, nodded in agreement. The silence in the room was a verdict. The true evisceration came a week later. An official letter arrived. Due to budget restructuring, her grant for the Neurolingua project was being revoked. Her university server access was terminated. Numb with shock, she tried to log into her research repository, only to find it wiped clean. Every line of code, every data set, every annotated paper, gone. A rumor, whispered by a sympathetic colleague, reached her. Blackwood Global Technologies was launching a new, revolutionary translation division. Their flagship product, a system called Global Talk, whose core architecture was suspiciously, uncannily, similar to her stolen Neurolingua model. Richard hadn't just denied her aid. He had identified her genius as an asset, plundered it, and left the ruins of her career and credibility to cover his tracks. The final blow was the university's quiet suggestion that she take a leave of absence. Her credibility was shot. Who would believe a disgraced, financially desperate academic over a billionaire philanthropist? She was erased. Dr. Jasmine Williams, the brilliant scholar, vanished. Now, the present snapped back into focus with the sound of Richard Blackwood's nervous, forced laughter. He was trying to regain control of the narrative, turning to his investors. "See? New York, full of characters." But Jasmine wasn't listening. Her entire body was humming with the resonance of the past. She watched as Richard, attempting to impress Sato and Tanaka, gesture with his wine glass. And of course, our proprietary translation systems, the backbone of our Asian market expansion, are second to none. We acquired the core IP years ago, a little-known project from a defunct university lab. We refined it, of course, turned theory into profit. The linguistic AI that changed our translation systems. The words, his words from a moment ago, echoed in her mind. It wasn't just a vague memory of a slight. It was a direct, unrepentant confession. The hum inside her crystallized into a cold, hard point of clarity. The $100,000 humiliation wasn't an isolated incident. It was the latest act in a campaign of annihilation he had waged against her for years. He doesn't just remember me. She realized, the truth settling in her soul like a stone. He profited from me. He built a piece of his empire on my grave. And in that moment, the weary waitress vanished. In her place stood a woman with nothing left to lose, and a weapon she had never forgotten how to wield. The truth, spoken in a language he could no longer control. The silence in the Prestige Club was a physical presence, a held breath waiting to be expelled. Richard Blackwood, momentarily unnerved, tried to reclaim his authority with a blustering, "Well, do we have a deal or not? The money is waiting." Jasmine didn't look at him. Her gaze was fixed on Yuki Sato and Kenji Tanaka. She saw the discomfort in Sato's eyes, the keen observation in Tanaka's. They were not cruel men. They were pragmatic ones, and they recognized a destabilizing variable when they saw one. The performance, Jasmine said, her voice reclaiming its academic clarity, is not for you, Mr. Blackwood. It is for your guests. She turned and walked toward the center of the room, a space usually reserved for string quartets or award presentations. Every eye followed her. The manager, Mr. Albee, looked poised to intervene, but a sharp, almost imperceptible shake of Sato's head stopped him. She stopped, closed her eyes for a brief second, and centered herself. She was no longer in a dining club. She was back in a lecture hall at Columbia, about to deliver the keynote she had been born to give. When she opened her eyes, she began to speak. But it wasn't just speech. It was a transformation. She started in Mandarin, the Beijing dialect, her voice a resonant melodic instrument. She didn't just describe the dessert menu. She wove a tapestry of history and culture around it. The dark chocolate souffle became a tale of the Mayan gods and the bitter, sacred journey of the cacao bean, her words painting images of rainforests and ancient rituals. She switched seamlessly to the Hokkien dialect, her tone becoming more intimate as she described a mango sorbet, linking it to the sun-drenched orchards of Taiwan and the poetry of longing for home. The initial tension in the room melted away, replaced by a rapt fascination. She was conducting a symphony of language, her voice rising and falling, her hands moving in elegant, illustrative gestures. She spoke of the philosophy of balance and the yin and yang of a sweet and salty caramel, and the Japanese concept of umami, hidden within a vanilla bean ice cream, forging a direct, respectful bridge to her primary audience. She glanced at the investors. Tanaka was leaning forward, his earlier stoicism replaced by intense focus. Yuki Sato's face was a canvas of shifting emotions, surprise, appreciation, and a dawning profound respect. He wasn't just hearing a language. He was experiencing a mind. Richard, however, grew more agitated. He was being upstaged in his own theater. He understood nothing but the tone, and the tone was one of mastery, not subservience. He tried to interrupt aloud. Yes, very nice. The theatrics are... Jasmine's eyes snapped to his, and without breaking her linguistic flow, she switched back to flawless, accented English for a single, devastating sentence embedded in her narrative. A lesson that some dishes, like some men, hide poison beneath a veneer of sweetness. They fund beauty but sow cruelty, and believe their wealth can purchase the very soul of the thing, leaving only an empty, gilded shell. The air crackled. The subtext was no longer subtext. It was a direct, public accusation. A few diners gasped. Richard's face flushed a deep, mottled red. He was being flayed open with the very performance he had commissioned. It was then that Jasmine, saving her most potent weapon for last, turned fully to Sato and Tanaka. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture of deep respect, and spoke in flawless, elegant Japanese, her Kyoto dialect so pure it was like listening to a classical geisha. Shitsurai shimasu, Sato-sama, Tanaka-sama, she began. I am being rude. I hope, for the sake of true progress, that your new translation system, the one Mr. Blackwood boasts of, treats all voices with the fairness and nuance they deserve, not just the loudest or the richest. The effect was electric. Tanaka's jaw went slack. Sato's eyes widened, all pretense of polite detachment gone. She hadn't just spoken their language. She had spoken it with a level of cultural and linguistic refinement that was utterly unexpected, a stark contrast to Blackwood's brutish transactionalism. Richard stared, utterly lost. What? What did she say? Yuki Sato ignored him completely, his eyes locked on Jasmine. Translation system? He repeated, the words slow and deliberate. How? How does a waitress know about our proprietary translation system negotiations? The foundation of Richard's billion-dollar deal began to quake. He had lost control of the room, of the narrative, of the woman he thought he had bought. In the ringing silence that followed Sato's question, Jasmine took a single step forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her whisper, in English now, was a detonation. Because I built it. The three words, I built it, hung in the air, simple, declarative, and utterly catastrophic for Richard Blackwood. For a moment, There was only stunned silence, broken by the clatter of a fork dropping onto a plate from a nearby table. Then chaos erupted, polite and contained, but chaos nonetheless. "What is the meaning of this, Blackwood-san?" Tanaka demanded, his voice sharp. Yuki Sato's face was a mask of cold fury. "You told us Global Talk was developed in-house from preliminary concepts. You said the original researcher had left the field." Richard was floundering, a shark on sand. His mind, so adept at financial models and hostile takeovers, scrambled for a lie. "She's lying. She's a disgruntled former employee, probably from the cleaning staff. She's trying to extort me." Jasmine stood her ground, a statue of calm amidst the turmoil. The memory of the theft was no longer a painful ghost. It was a sharp, usable tool. Flashback. She was in Dr. Albright's office, the day after her funding was denied. "Jasmine, a representative from the board's investment oversight committee is asking for a copy of your neurolingual white paper and your core code architecture for final audit purposes. It's standard procedure for grant dissolution." Desperate to prove her work's value, she had complied, emailing everything to an address at blackwoodglobalconsulting.com. She thought nothing of it at the time, assuming it was a subsidiary handling university assets. She was so naive. Now, a disgruntled cleaner who speaks Kyoto-level Japanese and understands the proprietary specifics of your flagship AI. Jasmine's voice was laced with scorn that could etch steel. "Your story lacks internal logic, Richard. A fatal flaw in any system. This is slander," Richard roared, pointing a trembling finger at her. "I'll have you arrested." "You will do no such thing," Sato interjected, his voice quiet but absolute. He turned to Jasmine. "You make an extraordinary claim. In my world, such claims require proof." This was the moment she both dreaded and, on some deep, subconscious level, prepared for. For 3 years, she had carried the embers of her past life with her, a secret identity hidden in plain sight. "I have proof," Jasmine said. She reached into the inner pocket of her white-dressing vest and pulled out a worn leather wallet. From it, she extracted not a driver's license or a credit card, but faded Columbia University faculty access card. The photo showed a younger, brighter-eyed version of herself, her hair in neat braids, her title clear. Dr. Jasmine Williams, Department of Linguistics and Computer Science. She handed it to Sato. "The magnetic strip is dead," she said, "but the number on the back is my old employee and research ID. It's time-stamped. It links to the university's central research server." Richard scoffed. "A fake ID? This is pathetic." "Mr. Albee," Jasmine said, turning to the frozen manager, "I require the use of your office computer and a secure Wi-Fi connection. And a projector." The manager, seeing the tide of power irrevocably shifting and not wanting his establishment to be the site of a full-blown corporate scandal, simply nodded and led the way to a small, glass-walled private dining room that doubled as a presentation space. The entire restaurant, now openly captivated, shifted in their seats to watch the drama unfold on the projected screen. Jasmine's fingers, which had been so steady carrying trays, now flew across the keyboard with the coder's instinctual grace. She navigated to an obscure archive section of Columbia's public-facing server, a digital graveyard for old projects. She typed in her credentials. Access denied. Of course. She tried another route, a backdoor she herself had coded into the early university cloud infrastructure, a fail-safe she never imagined she'd need. The screen flickered, and a directory filled with files appeared. There were video files, PDFs, and folders labeled Neurolingual_alpha. She clicked on a video file. The projector bloomed with light, illuminating the faces of the audience. There she was, Dr. Jasmine Williams, standing at a podium at the International Symposium on Computational Linguistics. She was speaking confidently, pointing to slides that detailed the core architecture of the neurolingual model, the very architecture that now powered Global Talk. And by implementing this recursive neural network for contextual ambiguity, the video Jasmine explained, we can move beyond literal translation and into the realm of intended meaning. The evidence was irrefutable. The woman in the video, the genius explaining the revolutionary technology, was the same woman now standing in a waitress's uniform in a silent, stunned dining room. Richard lunged. He couldn't bear it. The sight of his crime being exposed in high definition was too much. He stumbled toward the laptop, his hands outstretched to smash it. "You took my future to build your empire," Jasmine said, her voice trembling not with fear, but with a lifetime of suppressed rage and grief. She didn't try to stop him physically. She just looked at him, her gaze a weapon. "And now," she added, her voice cracking with the weight of the moment, "I'll take my name back." As Richard's fingers hovered over the keyboard, Tanaka grabbed his arm, restraining him with surprising strength. The investors exchanged a series of rapid, hushed comments in Japanese. One of them, a younger man who had been silent the entire evening, was already on his phone, dialing what was unmistakably a lawyer. But just as Jasmine felt the surge of victory, the screen flickered again. The video froze, stuttered, and was replaced by a stark, black screen with white, official-looking text. "File access blocked. Proprietary intellectual property claim. Blackwood Global Technologies. All rights reserved. Unauthorized access subject to civil and criminal prosecution." Richard, panting, wrenched his arm free from Tanaka. He straightened his suit jacket, a smirk of vindicated, vicious triumph returning to his face. The system, the law, the money, it was all his. He had built a cage around her work, and she was still inside it. He looked at Jasmine, his eyes gleaming with malice. "You see? You really think you can win, Jasmine? The law is mine too. You have a name on a dead file. I have patents, trademarks, and an army of lawyers. You have nothing." The digital blockade on the screen was a wall, and for a terrifying second, Jasmine felt the old despair threaten to swallow her whole. He's right. The system is his. I'm just one woman. But as she looked at Richard's smug, victorious face, the ember of defiance, fanned by the oxygen of public witness, burst into a full-blown flame. "I have the truth," she said, her voice low but carrying to every corner of the room. "And it seems I have witnesses." The story did not end in the Prestige Club. It exploded out of it. In the age of the smartphone, a spectacle of that magnitude was never contained. Within an hour, grainy, vertically filmed clips were trending on social media. The algorithms, perhaps ironically, did the rest. The hashtags were brutal. Hashtag billionaire bully. Hashtag waitress whistleblower. Hashtag stolen research. By morning, Jasmine Williams was both a hero and a target. Her phone buzzed incessantly. First with requests from journalists, then with anonymous numbers spewing venom. "Know your place, bitch. He'll destroy you. You should have taken the money." She changed her number, but the fear was a cold stone in her gut. Richard's PR machine shifted into overdrive. Press releases were issued, painting Jasmine as an unstable, delusional former student with a grudge, attempting to extort a respected philanthropist. A libel lawsuit arrived at her tiny apartment, delivered by a smirking process server. The document claimed damages in the tens of millions. It was a weapon designed not to win in court, but to bankrupt her, to crush her spirit through endless, expensive litigation. She visited her mother that evening. The nursing home was a world away from the opulence of the Prestige Club, smelling of disinfectant and boiled vegetables. Her mother, Grace, was propped up in bed, her speech still halting from the aphasia, but her eyes as perceptive as ever. She saw the shadows under Jasmine's eyes, the tension in her shoulders. "Jazz?" her mother whispered, her hand finding Jasmine's. Tears Jasmine had been holding back for years finally fell. She laid her head on her mother's lap and wept. For the stolen career, for the fear, for the overwhelming weight of fighting Goliath. "I'm so tired, Mom. I don't know if I can do this." Her mother's hand, frail but firm, stroked her hair. "I always knew," she said, each word a struggle, but her meaning crystal clear. "I always knew you would speak again." It was all the validation Jasmine needed. She was not fighting for revenge. She was fighting for the woman who had taught her the power of words in the first place. Meanwhile, in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Richard Blackwood was also cracking, though he would never show it. The Sato Kai deal was in tatters. Yuki Sato had formally suspended all negotiations, citing ethical concerns. Other partners were getting skittish. The stock of Blackwood Global Technologies dipped 5% in pre-market trading. The narrative of the infallible titan was fracturing. In a moment of unchecked rage, he called Jasmine from a block number late one night. "You think this is justice?" His voice was a venomous snarl down the line. "You've made a powerful enemy, Jasmine. You'll regret ever crossing me. I will bury you." But the fear was gone. Having faced the worst, oblivion, she was no longer afraid of his threats. Her reply was calm, clear, and final. "No, Richard. I'll regret ever letting you silence me." She hung up, a sense of eerie peace settling over her. The war was on, but she was no longer fighting alone. The court of public opinion was with her. And then a breakthrough. An email arrived from a personal account she recognized. Yuki Sato's assistant, Dr. Williams. It read, "Mr. Sato was deeply impressed by your integrity and your intellect. He believes the world of business needs more voices like yours and fewer like Mr. Blackwood's. Sato Kai Holdings will be honored to sponsor your legal defense and any counter litigation you wish to pursue. You do not need to fight this alone." It was a lifeline, a powerful, legitimate ally. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe she could win. Exhausted but hopeful, she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. She woke to the buzz of her new phone. It was Dr. Albright, her old mentor, his voice frantic. "Jasmine, my God, are you all right? I just saw the news." "What news?" she asked, sitting up, her heart starting to pound. "It's everywhere. Turn on your TV." With trembling fingers, she navigated to a major news network website. The headline was in bold, black letters, a digital obituary. Dr. Jasmine Williams, key figure in Blackwood scandal, found dead in apparent suicide. Below it was her Columbia faculty photo. She stared at the screen, her blood turning to ice. The room spun. It was a lie, a grotesque, malicious lie. But the world was reading it. He wasn't just trying to bury her in lawsuits. He was trying to erase her from a narrative completely. The obituary was a masterstroke of psychological warfare, designed to silence her permanently. For a few horrific hours, it worked. Jasmine sat in the dark of her apartment, paralyzed by the sheer audacity of the lie. The phone rang, reporters now calling for a comment on her own death. The world was writing her epitaph while she was still breathing. But the move, like Richard's arrogance, was his undoing. It was too desperate, too cruel. It galvanized her allies. Yuki Sato issued a furious public statement denouncing the character assassination and confirming he had spoken with a very alive Dr. Williams hours earlier. Dr. Albright and a coalition of outraged academics from Columbia published an open letter demanding a full investigation into the theft of her research and the fraudulent death notice. The police, now involved due to the threat implied by the fake obituary, discover a failed attempt to hack her apartment security system the night before. Richard hadn't just tried to kill her reputation. He'd tried to gain physical access. It was a final piece of evidence that turned the tide from a corporate dispute into a criminal conspiracy. The final, killing blow came from within Richard's own empire. A whistleblower from Blackwood Global, a junior accountant who had grown a conscience, leaked a single damning internal email to the SEC and the New York Times. It was from Richard to his then COO, dated 3 years prior. The Williams woman is a problem. Her grant is denied. Acquire the Neurolingua assets through the university shell company. Clean the servers. Offer her an NDA and a pittance. If she refuses, bury her. She's nobody. She's nobody. The phrase echoed through the news cycles, becoming the epitaph for Richard Blackwood's career. His board turned on him. Investors fled. The SEC launched an investigation for fraud and securities violation. The empire he had built on stolen intellect and broken lives crumbled in a matter of days. The climactic hearing was not in a courtroom, but a televised settlement conference with the university and intellectual property board. Richard, looking haggard and shrunken in his expensive suit, tried one last time to defend himself, mumbling about business acquisitions and misunderstood intentions. Then, the doors at the back of the room opened. Jasmine walked in. She was not in a waitress's uniform or a hurriedly bought suit. She wore an elegant, simple dress, her posture erect, her head held high. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed like a field of lightning. She was alive, radiant, and utterly composed. She walked down the aisle, her eyes never leaving Richard's pale, shocked face. "Did you really think," she asked, her voice clear and resonant in the hushed room, "that you could erase me with a headline?" She took her seat at the plaintiff's table and presented her evidence with the cool precision of the scholar she was. When Richard's lawyer tried to intimidate her, she quoted scripture, her mother's faith now her own armor. "No weapon formed against me shall prosper." The board's ruling was swift and unequivocal. The intellectual property of the neurolingual model was restored to its rightful owner, Dr. Jasmine Williams. All patents held by Blackwood Global were invalidated. The university issued a formal, humiliating apology and reinstated her with tenure and full back pay. Her mother's care was secured for life. Richard Blackwood was indicted on multiple counts of fraud, theft, and conspiracy. The Titan had fallen. The autumn leaves swirled in the quadrangle of Columbia University. Jasmine walked the familiar paths, not as a ghost of her past, but as its master. She had launched the Grace Williams Foundation, funding young women of color in tech and linguistics. She pushed open the door to her new classroom. It was packed. Students, young and old, looked at her with a mixture of awe and admiration. She set her notes on the podium and smiled. A young black girl in the front row, her hair in beautiful, intricate braids, raised her hand shyly. "Dr. Williams," she asked, her voice full of wonder, "is it true? Can words really change a world?" Jasmine looked at her, seeing a reflection of her younger self. Full of dreams, yet to be scarred by the world's cruelty, her heart swelled with a purpose deeper than any algorithm. "Words change mine," she said, her voice soft but carrying to every corner of the room. "Now let's change yours." Later, in her new office, surrounded by books and the quiet hum of a reclaimed future, Jasmine opened her laptop. Amidst the hundreds of congratulatory emails, one stood out. It had no subject line, and the sender address was a string of encrypted characters. She opened it. The message was brief, chilling in its simplicity. "They weren't after your research, Dr. Williams. They were after the language behind it. The key, they still are. Watch your back."